Hey guys, Savage Joy here with Real Progressives. Tonight I am continuing my alliance with other independent media. Tonight I am joined by Jamarl Lamont Thomas from the Progressive Soapbox. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. A couple people actually requested a duo of us, so I'm glad.
No way, really? I'm flattered. I'm flattered.
Well, your show has definitely taken off. Like, you've been doing this a little bit. What initially got you started?
It's funny. It doesn't feel like it's been a little bit. It feels like it's been. My wife and I were talking about it today, and it's been over 2 years, I think, since I've started my show. God, it feels so weird to say, like, because it doesn't feel that way. Like, it feels it still feels relatively new, and I'm still not necessarily used to, I guess, being under this model of functioning, if that makes sense. Like, after working in a particular industry for your entire life and then moving to something like this, it's such a sea change. Politics. I found myself during a certain period going through this phase of inhaling history or historical context and looking at political affairs through those lenses. And it was aggravating. Like, the level of hypocrisy that is fronted in politics, it's stunning. And when you kind of grow up with this idea that politics is what politics is, meaning there's nothing behind the veil, people acting and, great for the American public, and they're just fighting for these interests for the people, and they just have these disagreements as hardy gentlemen. And then you learn that a lot of this is based on cash. None of this, or much of this, is not based on the public interest. It's based on the very interest of a sliver of the political spectrum, with the rest of people relegated to football fans. And it's annoying. It was an aggravation associated with it. Now, me being aggravated is one thing. Me talking to every family member that I can talk blue in the face to, and them looking at me with this kind of blank lens of like, oh my God, what is he talking about? And so I started almost organically getting into my camera and just, bitching about whatever. And then it slowly went from bitching into kind of making these kind of stories of sorts, so covering news stories. And then it went from covering news stories to like, you know what, I need a desk. Maybe I need a light. Maybe I need this. Maybe I need that. And over the course of time, you find yourself, you look back and you're like, how the hell did this happen? But it's like one small change after the next small change. And you go like 2 years in and you have a show. It wasn't intended to be a show. It just kind of intended to be bitching and complaining and eventually flagging my perspective of the world and saying, look, this is my perspective of events. This is my logic in it. You can pick it apart. There's nothing else pushing me other than me. And I got to tell you my biases up front. And it became a thing. People started to watch. It shocks the shit out of me to today, but people started to watch.
I'm right there with you. That's how I started. I was like, F Hillary and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, Real Progressives is like, hey, do you want a show? And I'm just like, okay. And then you start interviewing like actual, like real people. And you're just like, how does this happen? How? Like, I'm just a dork in Pennsylvania. How is this happening? Which is cool. Weird. It's humbling.
It's bizarre. Like, it is bizarre. Like, my thing was in software engineering. I had been a software engineer for like 8 years. And, it's like I got to the point where I started to pay more attention to like news, history, politics. And I found that I was being pulled in a particular direction on that stuff. But how I process the world is for the most part through software. Like, even like work, like what I consider to be work, what I consider to be like it's deep held beliefs, not necessarily something on an intellectual level. On an intellectual level, work is work. It's whatever you do to make ends meet in order to get you from point A to point B. But at a deeper level, it's like, what does it mean to work? What does it mean? How many hours a day should an individual work? What is work compared to other people who are doing stuff in the community and society? All those things get very bizarre because you're comparing something that doesn't exist, but that you have a deep-seated belief about, this idea of what work means. And you're comparing it to what you do, which makes a living for you, and it still work. Like, it's so bizarre. My wife hits this too. When she started working at home, her schedule changed. And in her schedule changing, she was like, well, I can get my work done in 5 hours. All right, great. I've done what I needed to do. Now, but in her head, work is an 8-hour day, in which case she's like, oh, maybe I'm shirking my responsibilities. It's so bizarre that we started creating these deep-seated belief systems. But yeah, I was in software for the longest time. And when I kind of slowly made that switch over, I would work all day for like 8 hours, then come home and do like 5 hours on the show. That's an insane schedule. And my wife hated it at first because in her mind, he's just dicking around in that room, and there are other things that we could be doing. And after a while, I think maybe when I hit around 10,000, she's like, okay, this is something. This is, a real thing. And she got on board. But it has been a weird transition into doing this at a larger scale. Very bizarre.
Absolutely. Hey, I still work full time during the day and then do sometimes as many as 8 shows a week. And I'm like, yeah. I feel like I'm 80. It takes a toll. I get it.
The other woman. I'm what wife used to call it, the other woman. It's the when I was younger, chess was the other woman. It was a thing where you would spend hours playing. It's like chess is the thing that, like, what is it? Chess, like, men and women are things that men need or something. It's a famous chess saying. It's the funniest thing in the world. It's like the other woman is often called the other woman in chess circles. And in this case, this became the other woman. It's like you spend all day doing one thing, and then you go back and spend all of these hours doing something else. And anybody who's near you or who wants your company is like, okay, what are you spending all your time with? Yeah. Well, I'm doing this thing. Well, you could be spending that time with me. It's like you're dating.
Right. But at the end of the day, I'm sure she's proud. I know my husband is of me, so I think it's all good.
She is now.
She
is now. But yeah, she is now. In the beginning, that's
much. I actually, right before we got on the air, I got I don't want to say an emergency update, but like this blurb texted me, and it said, the Dems have reached an agreement with Trump, so they won't have to they won't have to cut down again. So I'm actually really, really, really surprised that Pelosi didn't fold until now. I'm interested to see what do you think? Because the details aren't out yet.
Pelosi and Democrats, who are usually a spineless, rather contemptible group of human beings, would typically fold. It's a jello spine, just invertebrates entirely. But this is not the same scenario. All incentives in the world were for Pelosi to not fold on this, in which case she didn't fold. Like, from a policy standpoint, the entire public, the overwhelming majority of the public, looked at this as Trump's wall. When the government was shut down, they looked at it as Trump's shutdown. All of the Democrats, the overwhelming majority, even people who aren't Democrats but were to the left, were like, not a goddamn cent for that wall. And so you have this group of people who call themselves resistance, have screamed about resistance for 2 years, get an issue, a singular issue, where all of them could be completely inflexible on without any political consequence from the standpoint of the public. Every last incentive in the world for this was for Nancy Pelosi to stand there and tell Trump to go F himself. And that's exactly what she did. She was like, I'm not budging on this wall stuff. I will give him money for border security, but this is, political wrangling to some degree of border security, but not for that wall. I'll give you money for the border, not for that wall. And she's stuck by that. Good job, Pelosi. I mean, this is one of those few times. But again, all incentives in the world went for her to not budge on this issue. Even among people who are Trump supporters who looked at this and said, we think that there's something going on at the border. Something needs to be done about the border. Even when they agreed with Trump on the border issue, they didn't agree with the shutdown. They thought it was a bridge too far for the president to entirely shut down the government for something that he wanted. What if the next guy does it for Medicare for all? I'm not going to fund this government until you're going to fund Medicare for all. Help, Green New Deal. Help, pick your poison on this. This sets a weird precedent that even though the Republicans backed Trump on, they backed him up on it because it was his wall. Like all of the flack on this ended up on Trump because they understood that Trump was the one running around the country saying Mexico was going to build a wall. So this is nonsense. So, I suspect that the what they've agreed upon was a language shift. I mean, Trump in the State of the Union speech kind of made this point that whether you call it, there's a very specific line where he says, whether you call it a fence or whatever, I just want to build something. Like, I don't care what you call it, just build it so I can tell my base that I've gotten something done. And mind you, it was like $5 billion. Like the wall thing was supposed to be like, what, 100 billion or so, some insane amount of money to build the border wall. Trump was just asking for 5 billion. He just wanted to win. This was politics. Mm-hmm. He took a political stance and he lost. I mean, was boiled down to. But no, I'm curious to see what the specific language that they agreed upon. I want to see what that is.
Yeah, I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of semantics. I don't know, and so many people who are like, yes, Queen, Nancy, and they forget the fact that Trump endorsed her. She's not like some hardcore, rebel. He endorsed her. He's never endorsed a Dem until her. What does that say?
Because there was nothing to lose in endorsing her. I guess it made it. There's a certain stink associated with Trump. Anything Trump supports, Democrats are reflexively against. I don't know if he's doing gamesmanship in this kind of endorsement thing. I don't know if that was his. If between 3 a.m. me and my God, if I was trying to choose somebody, who would it be type thing. I don't know if he cared per se. I think he might have just been throwing hay in the Democratic politics. That's what I think. I could be wrong.
She is such a damn mess. People are like, oh my God, the clap back, this whole thing about the clap. And then she came out and said she meant it sincerely. So there's two, there's either she did it sarcastically and she's lying to save face, or she didn't do it sarcastically. She did it legit and she's, clapping for Trump. Either way, she's an ass.
I took it as she was being a bit of a dick, if I'm being honest. Way. So when Trump, I forget the exact line that Trump made, and Nancy Pelosi reaches in and claps in front of them. When people do that, they're usually doing that to kind of like point a finger at the person, this kind of condemnative finger of, ha, look at this. This is an important thing that I want to put an exclamation point behind him. I want you to see clapping about this. That type of thing. I took that as her being a bit of an asshole to him.
But then she said she did it in earnest. So it's like, okay, you're walking it back, which is really weak. You should have said
earnest. Earnest about what? What does Nancy Pelosi means in terms of earnest?
She was saying she was really clapping for what he was saying. It was a welcome thing for him to say. So now she's walking it back, and that's a sellout move. Like, if you're gonna do that, be about it and be like, yeah, I was mocking him because he's an idiot.
I took her as I feel you. I mean, maybe I misunderstood that. Maybe I took that a different way. I took her as mocking him. Yes, entirely. I took her as mocking him. Whether she would say, yes, I was mocking the president, I don't know. But I took it as mocking. Now, it depends on what Nancy Pelosi means by, I meant it earnestly. Does she mean that I was earnestly mocking him? Does she means that, yes, I agree so emphatically with what he was saying that the level of emphaticness that I'm agreeing with it gets across a certain, mocking in and of itself. I mean, it depends on what she means. I don't necessarily. The reason why I think this way, because Nancy Pelosi gets no bang for her buck for supporting anything that Trump does. She just doesn't. I mean, if you're talking about Democrats, they don't want her to support anything Trump does. And in fact, the very act of Trump supporting something is almost a black stain. She's not going to give Republicans to back her. So again, in that case, it doesn't matter. In a sense, she's not going to get Trump voters. I don't know what her incentive would be for her to be giving him a clap of approval in that sense, if that makes sense. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, she said that she prays for him all the time. Which is really freaking funny.
Come on, that's what I mean. Do you honestly believe that $100 million Nancy Pelosi takes time out of her day
Yeah.
to carve out a 30-second prayer for Donald Trump. More like I pray that he, chokes on applesauce or something. I can't believe that. Like, this is what I mean. This is a level of pandering. That is insane. That is, come on. I have hot sauce in my pocketbook. That's
And speaking of pandering, how do you feel about Kamala?
Panda Bear. So Kamala Harris, what did she say? She said something that was like, what? Like, no way. I watched her truancy videos. Those videos are troubling to me. Have you seen those?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, those videos are troubling. She's like giggling like a schoolgirl. And I don't say freaking speech, but her giggling, talking about truancy and threatening to lock up a mother of two that's homeless and is trying to do the best they can to make ends meet, and not having access to the things that she needs in order to make that work, like a home, like a house. And she's talking about threatening to throw the woman in jail. And she's like, this is a success story. I mean, she's like, me threatening this woman is somehow a success story. Clearly, the woman doesn't have access to the things that she needs. As for Kamala Harris, she puts me in the mind of Clinton. I listened. Did you hear her speech, her campaign video? It was empty. It was nothing. It was like a complete empty shell of a video. You leave it like, I don't know what I just watched. Like, I have no idea what this means.
And she still doesn't have any kind of platform on her page. Weeks later.
Well, she has the identity thing going for her, which she's going to scream to high hilt that she somehow shares in the African-American experience. She's going to run on identity. I mean, identity and her being a quote-unquote progressive prosecutor, whatever that means. That seems to be her platform. Otherwise, I don't know what it is. Like, each candidate is trying to distinguish themselves from the campaign. It's kind of like bodybuilders. Have you seen behind the scene bodybuilders when these guys are like greasing up and these guys are back there like trying to get their muscles swollen, and you have all of these muscle built bodybuilders of various sizes who are, God, I know too much about this and I don't know why I know this, but they stand side by side one another, and the smaller guys try to get near the bigger guys in order to try to look a particular way. That's kind of what the Democratic thing is. Each one is trying to distinguish themselves. So Bernie Sanders is Bernie Sanders. Everybody knows who Bernie Sanders is. Elizabeth Warren, class warrior. I mean, that campaign speech was amazing. A full-on class war speech, being unapologetic about it. People saying that this is class war. For the last 50 years, class war has been enacted on the top 1%, on the 99%. She was unapologetic. Loved it.
When was that?
This was Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren's opening campaign speech.
Yesterday, you mean?
Yeah. I think it came out Saturday.
Saturday.
Yeah, complete broadside. I love the video. My audience didn't like the speech overall, but I suspect they don't like Elizabeth Warren, not so much that they didn't like the speech. If that speech came out of the mouth of Bernie Sanders, they would have absolutely loved it. And who was the other person? Tulsi Gabbard. So Tulsi Gabbard is odd. She's an odd duck on this. She somewhat gets a mixed tally on this. For me, I am open to Tulsi Gabbard. I want to hear more of her and her campaign and the stuff she has to say. But she's clearly quartered off herself as an anti-war candidate. Like, all of these guys are trying to distinguish themselves in a massive field. Like, what does Kristen Gillibrand stand for? Who knows? I have no idea. Marianne Williamson, that's the one who wanted reparations. That's Oprah Winfrey's spiritual advisor. Even her, she's going for spiritual renewal, whatever the hell that means. Like, all of these guys are courting out who they're going to be in the contest. I have no idea what Kamala Harris is. And that's a problem. Yeah, that's a problem.
As far as Elizabeth Warren, there are so many reasons no.
So I've made the point, and good, because you can set me straight on this. You can take the piss.
Okay, well, first of all, she takes big money. That's a done with me. Done.
Okay. She's supposedly, I thought she stopped taking money from corporate PACs and this other stuff.
Right. That's what she says. But she also just took a big chunk from Wall Street the week before she announced. So she may already have enough to get get by.
Money from Wall Street? Wall Street is giving Elizabeth Warren money?
Yeah.
Okay.
Same with Kamala and same with Booker.
I believe those. But Elizabeth Warren is usually scared the hell out of Wall Street. They, this class warrior stuff.
See, here's the thing, though. When you diss Bernard, who is like Wall Street is terrified of, and you endorse the queen of Wall Street, they are no longer scared of you. I mean, why would they be scared of you now? You just basically canceled out everything you said you were all about.
I guess the question is, do you think that she's earnest about this? Like when she comes out and she gives those speeches, and she's been doing this, for however long she's been in politics, working for like the environmental, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, those type of things. And she's been somewhat straightforward in wanting to tax bankers and probably wanting to beat bankers up if she could get away with it without legal repercussions. Do you think she's being earnest about that? Or do you think she's just making that up? Because I think that's the fundamental crux of the question, right?
I don't think she's saying it in earnest. Before 2016, I would have said yes. But I can't get over the matching pantsuits and stuff. Like and furthermore, one of my biggest like litmus tests, to lack of a better term, is Medicare for All. And she's going back on that shit. And I can't, as someone with severe medical needs.
And that's a red line for me too. I agree with you on that. I've always said I don't care who's on the other side. Medicare for All is a red line. And it does. I remember there's an article that came out the other day saying she was wobbling on this whole Medicare for All thing. So fair enough. I wanted to hear somebody's take on it. If it's between Elizabeth Warren and Donald Trump, like it's like to me the Elizabeth Warren thing becomes somewhat easy. But
I'll write in Bernie again.
It's funny. Did I write in Bernie? No, I just voted Stein. My wife wrote in Sanders.
Really? She tried to write in Sanders. I love her.
I told her, they said, yeah, this is not going to count. And she's like, I wrote in Sanders after filling out Clinton. It was like, they're not going to read the Sanders part. It's like, oh,
you know what? It counts to her. And that's all that matters.
In her heart, they just broke her as a woman. Going, You're like, Bernie Sanders, asshole. I do hear you on the Warren thing. And if Warren comes out and Warren, is running and she wobbles at all, like I want to hear, I have an open ear, because this is the beginning. We have 2 years. And I want to hear what happens over the course of the 2 years. I will never forgive Warren for not backing Sanders for the Massachusetts thing. That's a certain degree of political cowardice to me that bugs the shit out of me. It wakes me up at night. And so I feel you on that part. And the Standing Rock thing was a big deal to me too. It's like you call yourself a Native American and then you don't support other Native Americans. So, there are issues with Warren. I agree with you. Not to mention, nothing in that speech went on military or foreign policy and those type of things. So there are deficiencies there. My argument is usually based around who would I settle for? Not necessarily the person who I want, but who would I settle for within the race? It's only like 3: Sanders, Tulsi, and Warren. But I think
it's so premature to say that, though. Like, I think we need to fight at this moment, because we still have.
And this is just this moment. Like, this could fundamentally change over the course of the election.
Yeah.
I'm open. So.
The MSM, I saw somebody sent me an article today. Gillibrand was cutting fried chicken with a knife and fork. This is what's on the news. The other day, Kamala loves her Chuck Taylors. This is why we need to be proud we're on independent media, because this is the shit they care about.
Well, what's wild about that? Why they do that? When we were talking, you're telling me about the desk in the background and saying like, oh God, I have a desk in my background. And my response was, that's genuine. It's authentic. You're a person. And as a person, you're going to have a desk in your background because you're doing a show as a person with other things in your life. Fair enough. You're not trying to be polished and like, I always said this kind of plastic face of Jake Tapper, the way they look into the camera and they give this, this false expression that looks like they practice. I said the same thing about the candidates. They're trying this odd, phony authenticity. Like, it's so bizarre. Like, it's pandering, but it's pandering for a digital age. So Beto O'Rourke. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez someone's natural at it. You know, she comes out, she cooks while she's doing her thing, and people are like, oh, she's cooking while she's doing her thing. This is so awesome. And fair enough for her, that's probably right because she's a 28-year-old and all of the spotlight just come out of nowhere. People see that and try to ape the popularity with that of authenticity, that these are regular people. Watch us. We're fabulously rich and wealthy, powerful, but we're just ordinary people just like you who like Chuck Taylors and like our fried chicken. See, watch me cut this fried chicken with a fork. And a better reward jumps the shark as a dental appointment, which is the most grossest thing I've ever seen in my life. And it's like, you're trying too hard. Like, this is not something that's just coming out as an outswell of just the normal course in which the way the person operates. It works for Cortez because Cortez is just being Cortez. It's just a natural outgrowth of who she is, that she's using social media in this way. But Beto, having a dental appointment, not so much. Gillibrand, what is that, cutting fried chicken with a fork? Not so much. Like, these are not things that the public likes. Like, it doesn't go viral. It just looks weird because it's not necessarily a natural thing. It's like false authenticity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it is an oxymoron. My favorite was when Kamala had no bite out of the sandwich and she's like, I eat like everyone else. And she looked like she couldn't wait to take a shower. Like, it was like pinky up and everything. I wish so bad I worked at that place and I'd be like, yo, they were talking about, here, just hold it for 20 seconds and I'll take
it. On video on YouTube, be like, they were just here for 20 seconds for that spot. It was like, oh God, this is so gross. It took place. Oh, awesome.
Or when she was dancing to Cardi B and they caught her off guard. And then when I posted the picture of that, I also posted one next to it where Cardi B was like, vote for Daddy Bernie, bitch. I was like,
oh, wow. Nice.
Sorry.
Nice. I love it. Vote Sanders. Stop listening to my music. Vote Sanders.
What do you see? One of my favorite videos from you was the one you did last week for the State of the Union. That shit got so blown up unnecessarily.
I was shocked by that. That video was 3 hours long. My wife and I what did I tell her? I said, I know what it was. She was like, hey, I'll do the show with you. She had been talking about it, and I've asked her more than one occasion if she wanted to do it. And usually she's, no, that's okay, or I'll be off camera, or it will be like forcibly doing the show because she couldn't go anywhere else, like when we were in Barcelona. And we had a single room for 2 weeks. And so when I did the show, she was just sitting in the room. And it's like, I need you to be quiet. I'm trying to do the news. You know, that type of stuff. A complete asshole. But on this one, she was like, all right, I'll do it. I was like, it shouldn't be that long. I can get your reaction as somebody who doesn't really pay attention to the news that closely. You can give me your impression of what takes place. And she said, okay. I think it was 3 hours between her, Abrams, and Sanders. Sanders won. It was like late at night. And Sanders says, she loves Sanders. And Sanders is like, I know it's late, and I'm not going to take long. And Sanders goes into like an hour. Pushing back on Trump and his like brass knuckles assault on the president of the United States that's for no punches while pushing his own policy initiative.
Yep.
And she sat there for the entire thing. I was shocked by this, but the audience loved it. They loved it. I couldn't believe. I was like, wow, I cannot believe that people sat here for 3 hours to watch. Even a portion of it. I think I like 8,000 views. I was amazed by that.
Oh no, Bernie got over 150,000.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, because they ended up dividing it by like Facebook and YouTube, and altogether it was over 150,000.
That's amazing.
It was, I mean, you know, but it's like the whole thing, you know, he hates Black people because he's going after Stacey. And people, even when you corrected them, they still wouldn't take their posts down.
Well, it's a nonsense perspective. Like, I understand that various people of various groups, like be it racial, gender, or whatever else, has a certain focal point of the world, like, you know, a certain lens on the world, and that there are certain things that may cut a particular way that other people may not fully see, but some may be sensitive of. And I'm talking about people being genuine, not nonsense stuff where they're just using, that person is anti-Semitic because that person, told the truth. Or, that person is sexist because that person is running in the race against Hillary Clinton. None of that nonsense. I'm talking about like real gripes that some people have with this stuff where they're being earnest. But Sanders, like in objective reality, Bernie Sanders giving a speech that he's given for the last 3 years does not in any way diminish the speech that Abrams is giving.
Right.
Abrams, he's the first African-American woman to give State of the Union. Then that doesn't change. She is the first African-American to give State of the Union. That's not in any way diminished by Bernie Sanders coming on and giving a speech that he's always given. Like understand what we're saying. That's utter nonsense. Like in any level of objective reality, that is nonsense. But yeah, it didn't stop the post. Bernie Sanders is racist because Bernie Sanders is going on after Abrams. It was like, how? Bernie Sanders is sexist because Bernie Sanders didn't do something, or that he did do something. They just look for ways to hit Bernie Sanders.
But so many of the same people said that it was fine that Kamala is going before her, which I think is ruder. I don't know.
Like, that's what I mean. Like, these are political actors. I don't care about their race. I don't care about their sex. I don't care. What are you doing for policy? Because at the end of the day, all of this false, racial stuff, the underlying reality of it is, what are you doing from the standpoint of policy? And Abrams, who's just a Democrat, is going to give a fundamentally different perspective of the world than Sanders. And by the way, she did. Like, her talking about voting and everything else, that's great. But for a federal level, that required something a little bit more tougher of hitting Trump in the face over and over again on stuff that he lied about or he fudged. That's what Sanders did. Sanders is a political actor in this case on a federal level. Stacey Abrams is not. Like, even just the very act of what they're going to say is going to be fundamentally different. It has nothing to do with race at all. Nothing. It has everything to do with what are the policy objectives that the people are trying to accomplish. And I got to be honest, the false racial stuff that Democrats kind of throw out there gets aggravating because it's almost racist in an opposite way to use that stuff. It's so bizarre. But no,
it minimizes real racism because it exists, and that's what needs to be focused on. Abrams works for Neera Tanden, so I didn't really expect much. But
she, it's a Democrat. Like, I gave Abrams a lot of airtime because I thought what was taking place in Georgia, she was being robbed. Like, I thought, right, she was just being robbed. And there was a travesty of justice for her to lose that governorship in the way that she lost the governorship. They're slow walking the vote, suppressing the vote in that area and everything else. But in the same way that I can support Beto when he's running against Ted Cruz, because I think Ted Cruz is utterly detestable, I can support her in the governorship because I think she's a hell of a better option than governor of Georgia than, I forget the guy who won the seat. But that's a secondary thing to whether or not what she's going to say from a policy standpoint is something that is going to be in my best interest or something that I'm even going to get behind to support, as opposed to somebody who's further to the left and further within my context of supporting my interests, like Sanders. Like, this notion that you need to shut up political speech is like Abrams can't stand her own, something to do with the race. And so Bernie Sanders need to shut up so she can get the spotlight by herself. It's like, this is nonsense. She's a political actor, just like Sanders is a political actor. And you get out there and you make your case and you pull people to your side. Abrams' speech, I'm sorry, was somewhat underwhelming. It wasn't great. It had nothing to do with her race. It just had everything to do with her political orientation. Sanders' speech was a hell of a lot better. And it's a good thing he went on.
And don't you think that I was looking at the comments and I lost my train of thought. I did not watch Kamala's. Did you?
I did not. I did.
I can only handle so much of her today.
I hate the fake news. I can't say. I have a hard time watching Clinton videos because of our fake news. And you look at it and be like, clearly people know that she's acting, and they're like, I don't understand why people say I'm robotic. I mean, I understand why you try to put on the best facade that you can because you don't want to be attacked for who you are. All of us do it to some degree. especially so in politics when people are looking at all various angles of you and they see more of you than most people would see under normal circumstances. But authenticity is a thing. It's just, something that's real. People see, for whatever reason, during these days, the difference in those facades.
And what do you think about all the Deborah Messings and Chrissy Teigens who were like so anti-Bernie, and now they're calling AOC their hero?
They were anti-Bernie out of political allegiances, I would argue. Like the hatred for Sanders is going back to the 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the election that they ran against killing. We're supposed to have a female president right now, and instead we got that goddamn Donald Trump to fucking Sanders. Like it's not anything that Sanders did per se, other than running in a race in a Democratic contest. It just so happens that they blame him in this kind of weird transference for Hillary Clinton losing the race, as opposed to Hillary Clinton losing herself. AOC
Right.
is not policy. I guarantee you, it is not issues of policy. If you were in a world where AOC was able to accomplish her political objectives, they would back you on the political objectives. It's person-based, if that makes sense. Like Sanders advocated a particular policy. Sanders is a man, he has a penis, and so he sucks because he somehow stopped Hillary Clinton from getting elected. AOC are not those things. She had nothing to do with Clinton losing or winning. And so even though she's saying this exact same thing as Sanders is saying, we love her. It's not policy at all. It's purely related to who people supported and what they believe their blame is in Clinton losing a race. I think we still live in the context of 2016.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the interesting things about AOC is a lot of people think she'll endorse Bernard like immediately, and I don't know if she will, to be quite honestly, like, period.
You don't think she'll endorse Sanders?
What's that?
You don't think she'll endorse Sanders?
I don't know. I really don't know.
She would absolutely endorse Sanders. And
I don't think she'll endorse anyone else, but I don't know that she'll come out.
I will even go further than that. Not only will she endorse Sanders, she's forced to endorse Sanders. I'm just saying, she doesn't have a choice. Like, at the end of the day, she calls herself a democratic socialist. Despite running within a Democratic Party, they consider themselves something separate and distinct from the party to which they run. It's almost like they're taking and trying to take over aspects of the party. There's a certain amount of clout associated with her being a socialist. And the other independent senator who calls himself a socialist, Bernie Sanders, the moment that he runs, all incentives in the world are going to be for her to endorse Sanders. And the question that people are going to ask if she doesn't is why not? And the fact of the matter is that why not usually revolves to a certain degree of political pressure or cowardice, just like Elizabeth Warren had when she was in Massachusetts. That is not going to be something. All political incentives are for her to endorse Sanders. She can't. It's like, I don't see how she doesn't. Like, the moment that you say, it's like, are you endorsing Sanders? If she says no, why not? What answer is Ocasio possibly going to give for why she's not endorsing Sanders when all of the policy objectives that she wants to accomplish is through Sanders? Her existence in the political space is because of Sanders. Yeah. And I got to be honest, in the same way Elizabeth Warren lost so much credibility when she didn't support Sanders, again, a person who was policy-wise, for the most part, in line with her, I think Ocasio-Cortez wouldn't suffer the same. I think that she doesn't have a choice.
I hope you're right. I don't know, man.
What's the reasoning? What's the counter incentive of, because I could be saying this a particular way that I'm missing something. What's the counter incentive? What's the thing that will push her to not endorse him?
I think I'm just paranoid because of Elizabeth Warren, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I was a speaker at the same event Alexandria was, and we met, and I had her on my show. I like her. I have nothing against her, but I don't know. And there was an article a few months ago where she said, they were like, are you going to endorse Bernie? And she said, I'm not endorsing anyone yet. And yet was the key word, and he hasn't announced yet. So there was this big thing about it. And I think even though I don't think there was merit to that, it still kind of like planted that seed of doubt.
Like, oh God.
Like, oh my God, this will fuck everything up.
I was so pissed at Elizabeth Warren when she didn't endorse Sanders, because it felt like Sanders lost Massachusetts by what, like 2 percentage points. It was like a narrow.
It was like 0.2. It was like
narrow. It was
nothing.
So narrow. And it was like, could her endorsement have made the difference with such a low margin? Maybe. And what does it look like when Sanders puts another state on the board? Like, and when she had that question, Cenk Uygur asked her that question, why didn't you support Sanders in the primary? That's something that a lot of lefties are pissed off about. She dodged it. And Uygur did follow up on that question. And she's like, well, I think we had a great primary, blah, blah, blah. Bullshit. No, that's not what you were asked. Why didn't you support Sanders? Did it have anything to do with you believing Clinton would win and you would be punished and chastised for not supporting Clinton? That's the answer, or that's the way you ask the question, because I kind of want to answer yes or no, when I actually full well believe that the answer is yes. I thought my political objectives would have been best suited if Clinton won, and it would have looked bad if I supported Sanders and Clinton won. I think that's the honest truth about it. I think the same thing is true for Ocasio, though. Like, people would wonder, why isn't the Democratic Socialists not supporting the Democratic Socialists? How do you answer that? And how do you square that with a base that puts you in office? Like, you're not getting corporate money. You're getting all the money from a particular base. How do you square that with your base when the base is asking those questions? I think that would be a brutal, brutal thing for her to endure. I don't think she could avoid it. I think she has to.
I hope you're right.
I could be wrong. That's my reasoning for it. I mean, but I could be wrong. This is political, prognostication.
I mean, she'll sure as hell lose a lot of support.
Right. I can't believe she didn't endorse Sanders.
I'm going to call you up. You said she would. Right. You got my hopes up.
I'm still waiting on Sanders to announce. He's freaking me out, man.
Oh, God, I can't take it anymore.
Somebody says Jamarl is going to cry on it, or Jamarl should do a show crying if Sanders doesn't endorse. Or even worse, like Sanders ends up endorsing Kamala Harris for the presidency of the United States. I have some cynics on my show that are looking for my punishment for supporting Sanders in this race.
When that article came out, that's like, oh, he's going to announce in the next few days. I made a video crying like, oh my God, this is so great, and like, it still hasn't happened. I'm like, damn. And Mike from the Humanist Report wants me to come on to represent burners as soon as he announces, which makes me want to speed it up even more, because I'm like, come on, dude. Like,
I have this thing in me that is like, when it says Sanders announcement imminent, and I was like, yes. And I did a video like, this is a great day. Bernie Sanders is going to run in the race. Like, just hyped up. And then like a week goes by, and another week. It was like, maybe their definition of imminent is different than my definition of imminent. I don't know what's going on. And it's like you're waiting and waiting, and it makes you anxious. It's like, all right.
I know.
Announce soon. He's going to announce soon. He's going to announce soon. And the longer it takes, it's like, fuck, he hasn't announced.
like, don't tell me you're having second thoughts. No. Yeah, I mean,
fear in me that he's like, well, I talked to Elizabeth Warren and she's gonna make it. It's like, no, that's unacceptable.
I think, okay, let me put my prediction. I think Elizabeth will eventually drop and endorse Kamala.
You think so? No way.
Yeah, I do.
I would go so far as to say she would endorse Sanders and try to run as his VP. I see that.
She would look stupid as hell if she did that, but I mean, I don't know.
It's just like, maybe.
I mean, she is Hillary 2.0.
But if Sanders is in the race, Elizabeth Warren is in the race, Kamala Harris is in the race, Jill O'Brien is in the race, you believe that she'll shaft Sanders again and go for Kamala? Oh, that would be brutal. We're going to have to put it happening. I have a bet already going with Sarah Reynolds about Trump and Medicare for all and all this other stuff. You're not going to have to put some bets on the board. I don't think she'll do that. I could be wrong, but I don't think she'll do that. I think she'd be more inclined to support Sanders than Kamala. I could be wrong.
Oh man, who's your dream team? My dream team from day one is Burn and Turn 2020. That to me, Oh, you want Miss Nina too?
Yeah, I like Turner. She's just not running. I
Well,
like
no,
Turner.
I mean VP.
President, well, VP, right? That would be interesting. You know, when he did, I assumed that Sanders was running the moment that Our Revolution came out, because
Yeah.
Our Revolution was like padding the ground, almost like a political organization suited, you know, put in Sanders' image in order to go back and to affect a certain agenda. Because the fact of the matter is, if Sanders got elected today, Sanders wouldn't be able to affect his agenda with the people in office right now. He needs to pad the ground with people who are more inclined to be on his particular policy and create a groundwork of support. Meaning you have to get the public on your side on this stuff. And when you get poll after poll after poll showing the public is aligned with your interests, then you ask the basic question of, if the public is behind me and you're supposed to be out there representing the interests of the public, why aren't you? You know, like that leaves a certain hammer that you can use to hit the public with in order to get them on your side. So I assume that he was running, but again, there's no way to fully know until the moment that he says he's running. But Nina Turner, yeah, I totally acceptable to me as vice president.
A lot of people still want Tulsi, and what I'm hoping is that she, like, in theory, she could drop and give her delegates to Bernard. Yes. And then she could be his VP. In theory, that could happen.
I like that. I need to hear more from Tulsi. But yes, I like her anti-war stance. Her anti-war stance is awesome to me. God, I want her in that debate. Because at the very least, I want her to push Sanders to the left on issues of war. You know, he's putting his toe in the water like, yeah, you know, Maduro's a brutal dictator, blah, 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 but we shouldn't do so-and-so. It's like this wishy-washy. You know, I don't want the wishy-washy. I want you to be honest. This is a coup perpetrated on Venezuela. I'm glad that you're willing to say as much, but let's be honest that that's exactly what it is. Not this nonsense of, you know, he's a brutal dictator that's crushing out. Whatever is taking place in Venezuela is for the people of Venezuela and shouldn't be for us to impose our political will on South America, screaming that we hate dictators while implementing or instigating coups and putting in dictators all across Latin America. It's utter nonsense. I don't like the wishy-washy stuff. I'm on that. So I like this idea of Tulsi being there, pushing that conversation. I'm not against Tulsi as VP. I'm not even against Nina Turner as VP. I like it. I want to see how it shakes out. But he has to get into the race for that to happen. Right now, it's like,
hurry the hell up, Bernard. If you're,
right.
I know Jane's watched my show a few times. So Jane, if you're watching, damn it, tell him to hurry the hell up.
Get over it.
I have no patience. Okay, so I kind of digress a little, but who's your favorite guest you've ever had on?
My favorite guest, Richard Wolff. Easy.
Love him. Love him.
Richard Wolff I don't know if he hates it, but I think it makes him blush a bit when I say he's altered my workable point of view of the world. Because, you know, it's oftentimes people are guided by their emotions. Often, you know, it runs into problems where people don't realize they're guided by their emotions. Like, it's just objective reality. It is like, no, you have an emotional base that's making a choice on what you want to believe in with other stuff, you know, the cognitive faculties kicking in order to kind of back up the point of view. Richard Wolff has altered my workable point of view on how I view the world and given a certain argument, an explanation of our system. And he does it amazingly well. Like, a few people have done this. Howard Zinn, Jack Fresco, both of them died before I could get him on my show. But fortunately, Richard Wolff is still kicking about. He has been an amazing guest on my show. Like, I love the way he breaks the stuff down and almost feels above it all, even though he's not above it all. He has a dog in a hunt like everybody else. His dog in a hunt is just further to the left, but love him as a guest. And he's always been nice enough to come on, even, you know, when I didn't have anybody on my show. It's like, yeah, sure, I'll be on your show. It's like, what? Are you serious? You'll be on my show?
That's awesome. Yeah, he's awesome.
I've had a few guests. Yeah, Richard Wolff is probably my favorite.
Have you ever had Dave Sirota?
I haven't had Sirota. I've tried to get him on my show. Dave Sirota wouldn't come on my show. He wouldn't even respond back to me.
He gives my requests in the comments hearts, and then like nothing happens. I'm like, come on.
Rokana, though. I offered Rokana to come on my show. Rokana said yes. He said, send me an email. I sent him an email. His appointee or pointer said, all right, let's make this work on this day and this time. Then she sends me a text saying, hey, can we push it for 30 minutes? And then no show. And then she hits me up later on and says, okay, what about 7 something tonight? Okay, 7 something tonight. Then no show again. I was like,
well, I will tell you though, I've had him 3 times. However, each time that happened, that she will text me and be like, he got called into a meeting, or, you know, it happened every time. So he's
okay with that, by the way. Yeah. My thing is, if you can't do the interview, just say you can't do the interview. Like at the point where I'm waiting for you all day, that's somewhat of a problem. Just be straight that you can't do it. I mean, her thing was, she said he wanted to play with his kids, which is like, okay, that's great. It's like that's how little you view my show, that you would not even lie to me. Lie to me. I want you to lie to me. Tell me something important took place. Don't tell me he wanted to play with his kids. Like, all right, he wanted to play with his kids. He had no value associated with what he was going to do or what you wanted at all. He wanted to play with his kids. I don't have any kids. I don't even like kids. So this has no credibility with me at all. Like, you know, these useless eaters.
Your damn rugrats are taking my time.
These rugrats are eating up my interview time. I have a show to do. I was greatly annoyed by that. I don't think I was wrong for being annoyed by that. And she gives me that excuse as if that excuse makes it work, like a Jedi mind trick. Well, I mean, he had to spend time with his kids. Okay. There are plenty of things that I want to do.
You should have been like, well, I canceled time with my kids so I could do this interview. Now what?
Or just say he has a prior engagement, he's not going to be able to do it. Or just that. Just that. That's so much. So come on. Go on.
What can we look forward to on your show coming up?
So my wife is going to be doing the patron appreciations. Apparently she enjoyed it and people enjoyed her doing it. So she's going to be joining me on the weekly patron appreciation shows. In addition to that, we were throwing about this idea of having a vlog, like a separate channel, just as a vlog of us stuff that we do around the house during the day and everything else. People were like, hey, you guys are interesting. It'll be interesting to see if, you know, how you guys function and percolate throughout the course of your week. That one, I don't know about that one, man. So that one is an interesting idea in as a thought. In reality, oh God, I don't know how that would work. Like, we say some really rough things and like in joke one another mercilessly. So they were like, oh God, he's brutally sexist and she's brutally racist. And it's the way we joke with one another. It's not. And I'm saying that I'm overplaying that, but we joke each other pretty roughly sometimes. So that would be an odd thing to have on video, because I can imagine people are taking that massively out of context. Like, he said this, and it's like, looking around. Like, when the larger clicks on that stuff, I can't imagine how people would take those things. But I don't know. Maybe we're wondering about the idea. But beyond that, just continuing with interviews, continuing with guests. It's just doing the shows, doing the news. I don't have a strong, even though I've been doing this show for about 2 years, I still don't have a strong idea on what the show is. I mean, the show is named after me. It's Jamarl Thomas, and ultimately I look at it as just my life. And whether that's an interest in UFOs, whether that's an interest in politics, whether that's an interest in Star Trek, the show can have any of those things at any particular one moment, because those are the things that will be on my mind at that one moment. And so I like that element of the show, even though the show has drifted heavily into politics and international affairs. But that's the show. I still don't know what I am, per se. So still just doing it all.
Absolutely. I'm looking for actually 2 Indigenous peoples to have on, because I've been reading a lot of articles about people who their takes on Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
Don't laugh. I'm serious. It's really fascinating.
I'm sorry. When you said that, it was like I'm looking for 2 Indigenous people. I said, well, my grandfather's Cherokee. Where is this going? And you were like, I have this take on Elizabeth Warren. It's like, oh God,
you're one of them.
her Native American heritage that never was that thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
God, she fell for it in that one, man. If Elizabeth Warren would have just not responded to that, she would have been much better served.
Oh my God, yeah. Giving
Like,
in to Trump is the worst thing. I mean, to see them together on a debate stage, I don't even know if I could watch because he would destroy her.
I don't know. I know people are giving her the shorthanded stick in regards to debates with Trump. I will say this: the Pocahontas thing will be used like a weapon and used mercilessly. Because even I, who looks at that and says that's slightly racist, it is the funniest shit in the world to hear. Added to that Elizabeth Warren, took the blood test and lost out on the blood test. Like
And
that
she
makes
should have not shared those results. Okay.
you should have done what the tobacco company did, or with the gas and oil lobby did when they realized that, oh right, climate change is real and we're causing it. You bury the report and you attack the evidence.
Yep.
Like, just shut up as if that never took place, that she never got it done. Nothing to see here, folks. We're moving on. This particular chapter has never been said. That is such a weapon. Like, I understand that they think that, oh, Donald Trump couldn't get away with that because people will be, against him using what is someone this kind of blatantly racist term in order to attack. Nonsense. He will use that like a weapon. And I guarantee you that the giggle factor associated with it will inoculate this thought that it's racist. I don't know the America that people believe we live in, but we live in one where the president of the United States can take a particular tack with immigrants, and people be, for the most part, okay with it. With the exception of we don't like him ripping babies from their mamas, but we need to do some of these immigrants, etc. Number two issue. And clearly they don't have the issue with him saying, Mexicans are rapists and drug dealers and all this other stuff. They still voted him in office. So I don't know if that would be the weapon that I think they think it might. And so I guess this is me agreeing with you to some degree, that I think you'll beat her over the head with that. But I don't know if she folds on the economic stuff. I think she holds her shape economically. The question becomes, can she withstand, I guess, this kind of the sandbox, pull you in the mud brand of politics that Donald Trump is going to engage in? And that's somewhat of an expert, which I don't know the answer to that. You say no. I'm saying I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. To me, and it's not just because I support Bernie, but if you look at the past 3 years, what has Trump said to him after he calls him a racist, a liar, xenophobic, all this shit he brings printouts of his tweets on poster board on the Senate floor. He calls him shit every day. And what does he say? Crazy Bernie. Yeah. Like once every year. Bernie, challenges him to a debate. Trump says yes, and then he backs out.
Of course he backs out.
He's scared of Bernie. That should make us want him even more.
He will be. I know some Republicans are thinking that Bernie Sanders is the weakest of the candidates. Oh God, it is so massively out. Like, if they think that their head is in their ass, like, I think they will be massively surprised with the upswell of attention that Sanders gets as he's going through those areas that Trump won, or that Trump thinks he has in his pocket and he finds out he doesn't necessarily have in his pocket. I think they would be dramatically stunned by that.
Yeah.
But I am curious about the Native American thing myself. I remember was it Cherokee or somebody sent a thing saying that they accept Elizabeth Warren's apology.
Right.
Did she do anything wrong? Like, what did she do wrong on this?
A document came out which proved that she stated she was Native American to get into Harvard.
Now, did she lie about that, or did she really believe that in the sense of her family?
That, right, and that's
true. I mean, somebody says, you have Native American heritage, and they accept the fact they have Native American heritage. My case is a little bit different because I can see my grandfather. He's right there. He was there. I grew up with him. He was clearly a Native American, or what they call it, Indian, as he was said. But I've met whites who would say I have Native American roots. They might, like, it becomes this thing of, did she really believe it? And if the answer is yes, they told her that. I think the issue becomes, did she just say that to get into Harvard? I think that's the issue here. And I think that's one of those things where it is impossible to know, which makes it a little, it makes it something that you can hit her on. By the same token, it's like hitting her on something that's somewhat of an unknown. I don't know. I mean,
I think for me, the thing that's so interesting that I find so fascinating is that the reports I've been reading, the articles I've been reading, they explain the difference between DNA and being in a tribe. And I think that's what's so, that us as Americans, we should really learn more about that, because it wasn't just her proving she had any, Native American blood. It's that if she's not associated with a tribe, then that's what they found offensive. So I think it's more like, I don't know. I find that so interesting. And I think, I guess more so even as a white person, I would really love to learn more about, how they differentiate, who is Native American, and also why that was offensive to even take a DNA test, because a lot of them feel that way.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm not part, like, it's one of those things that being within a particular culture, there are certain idiosyncrasies that are in those cultures, and things that they're sensitive about. It's hard for me to know why they're sensitive about it. I mean, it could be just one of those issues of, you have a race that was, for the most part, a genocide committed on a particular group, and the remaining people of that group have a certain culture to which they deal with. I don't, like, it's hard to know that stuff. Like, is it offensive to me? No, but I'm not Native American. Like even my grandfather, his father, I think, or grandfather, was a Cherokee, full-blooded. There was no doubt about whether or not he was a Native American. But that stuff was lost throughout history, like from grandfather, the great grandfather, etc., on down the line, to the point where you're just black. Yes, you know about this. No, you don't share any of the cultural stuff that's associated with it. And I would imagine all cultures have those little touch points that piss them off, or that kind of trigger something. But it's hard to know. God, this is going to sound bad. It's hard to know the objective, what level of pissed offness is appropriate.
Right.
And you can say, well, it's for the individuals in the process to determine the level of pissed offness that's appropriate. But of course, that's nonsense. Like, anybody can get pissed off over anything. This seems small to me, but I can say that from my perspective, it's
right.
Maybe a different thing from theirs. So I that's one of those things that is hard to quantify, if you can quantify it at all. But it would be interesting to hear the thing that pisses them off. Like, I give you an example. My wife and I went to a tribe as they were doing this kind of festivals, a Native American festival. In Virginia, we have all sorts of different tribes in the area. And as we are watching them do their thing, they're doing like the rain dance and all this other stuff. It's awesome. A kid walks up to do something. I forget what they called him up to do. And he's wearing a Washington Redskins shirt. And they stopped the process in order to come out and say, this is deeply offensive that you're wearing the shirt. Now, I understood that. That made all the sense in the world to me. You have a football team that's essentially calling you Redskin, like you're some kind of animalistic trope, and using that for the sake of making a profit. When your culture was essentially wiped out in the genocide at the founding of the nation. It's almost like they're stepping on your grave. So fully get it. That kid, but they stop it. Like, that's one of those things where that's a touch point. That's a sensitive point. And it's a sensitive point that I can understand it being a sensitive point. But her taking a DNA test, like, it just seems extreme as an insult point. But people are different. And, in their own cultural bubbles, the level of offense that they give to those things sometimes is specific to the culture itself. So I would be interested to hear.
Yeah.
Test was offensive.
Yeah, good point. Absolutely. Who in your hope for guests, who would be your dream guest? Who do you hope to get one day?
Dead or alive? Like person,
Feasibly?
okay. If somebody who is living, Howard Zinn, if you're talking about somebody who's dead, I would love to get Howard Zinn on the show. He passed before I had the opportunity to do so. Jack Fresco would be another one that was dead. A person who's living on the show. It would have been nice to get Rokana. So there's that. I'm still sore and bruised about that one. A dream guest for the show. I wouldn't mind having Ocasio on. I wouldn't mind having Nina Turner on. I mean, I wouldn't mind having, of course, Sanders. I mean, but that's somewhat of a given in the sense I would love to have Sanders on. I think he would hate the interview, if I'm being honest. I would ask him some questions that would probably be uncomfortable to Sanders.
Yeah, me too. I had his son. That's about as close as I get.
I would have some questions where he would be like, all right, I want to get off this interview.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think of, God, man, there's so many dead people who I would love to have on the show. Like, but I'm going to say with Sanders as a big ticket guest for current knowledge, like current politics. I would love to have Sanders on the show.
That would be a dream for sure.
Jimmy Dore's been trying to get one show for God knows how long. He's angry and
Do you have any, well, first off, share your info, your where we can watch you, your Twitters, your Facebook, share all that fun stuff.
So on YouTube, I'm under Jamarl Thomas, but you can put on the Progressive Soapbox and my content will come up. On Twitter, I am the Prog Soapbox, TheProgSoapbox. And on Facebook, I think it's under Jamarl Thomas also. I have a Facebook page, but I don't really use it as much. I tend to be on Twitter and YouTube more than anything else.
Awesome. And what would you like to leave our viewers with? What do you want them to take away?
What I want them to take away, that's an interesting thing. Our society, well, my wife and I watch Star Trek. She hates watching Star Trek with me. Usually she does. And because inevitably, if we're watching like The Next Generation, what usually happens is as the show comes on within the first 5 minutes, I pause it and I'm like, hey, the reason they're doing it is because of blah, 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 blah. And what a show that's supposed to be like 48 minutes turns into like 2 hours of me mansplaining. The point that I made to her the other day was we have a cynical culture. That culture that's cynical is made out of the culture itself. It's like the experiences and things that propagate are the things that are beneficial to the people in the society itself, or that are beneficial to the people who are pushing those things. I say that to say this. One of the things in Next Generation was this kind of hopeful vision of what humanity could be. This kind of overarching thing of when humanity gets this shit together, when the kids grow up, the world can be a fundamentally different place than what it currently is. We don't have those things anymore. And I found that even in my show, I devolve into, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is a fire, that's a fire. I've often made the point in the show, at least when I used to start the show off, was that a different world is possible. And a different world is possible from the standpoint of us choosing a different world. How we've organized ourselves is not an issue of God, it's an issue of policy. I say that because I want to drill into people's heads that this is something that you can change. This is purely a conceptual device. You can change the conceptual device. My show, even though I don't necessarily hit that point, I want people to at the very least to come away with that the world can be somewhat of a different place, that these things are not acts of God. These things are acts of policies. And as bad as our political system is, it can be changed. I understand people have their differences about Sanders, but fact of the matter is we are seeing a political shift in the country. It's almost like we're standing in the middle of a political shift. Think of what Obamacare was, public option. You couldn't even get the public option board up. And you're now talking about Medicare for all as a litmus test to whether or not people are going to get a particular vote. And the major candidates in the race, whether they believe it or not, at the very least are forced politically to kowtow to that political interest, even if it's just lip service. That's a difference. You're talking about expansion of college and Social Security. You're talking about expanding like a federal jobs program. All of these things are the things that are on the talking block. You even have candidates talk about reparations. Like, we're in the middle of a shift of the Overton window. My suggestion here is that a different world is possible. It does require numbers in order to push the political space. But there also needs to be something in the political space that's willing to reach out and to instantiate those changes. So when people calm down and a new center is created, that you're living in a fundamentally different system than what you was before. And those people get stuck within the hegemonic viewpoint of that system until you get to a point of changing that system also. A different world is possible. It looks bad. People are cynical. But this is not an act of God. This is active policy. We can change those. So that's an odd way to get to where I'm going with that. But the beauty of Star Trek was that it looked beyond where we are into this thing of this is what we can be. Fucking utopia. Now, utopia is not utopia. Star Trek has its issues. Clearly, they ended up in wars. But at the very least, from our vantage point and what we consider to be humanity as it is now versus what they're talking about as humanity, you're talking about rational human beings growing. We don't see stuff like that anymore. Oftentimes, our space stuff is cynical and wars and poverty and everything else. I'm saying, no, Bernie Sanders is not going to make Star Trek. So there's that. But there is something to be said about moving the ball and moving the space while the iron is hot and while you have people talking about the things that you tend to care about. And from a polling standpoint, one issue after the next that lefties push, the public is on board with. So different world is possible. Just have to be willing to push for it.
Absolutely. Perfect ending way to close this with some hope. I'm kind of lacking on that lately, I gotta say.
Political sport of some degree. Like, these guys shut down the entire government because the president wanted to build a goddamn wall. Like, understanding what we mean by that. And shutdown is a euphemism for people not getting paid. The majority of the people from paycheck to paycheck, and they were willing to take a cynical position of not funding the government itself, where hundreds of thousands of people, like 800,000 people, weren't being paid for 2 weeks because somebody wanted to put up a border for something that didn't need to take place. Like, that is a level of cynicism that is amazing. And if you get stuck in that mindset, it's gross. It looks all bad. It looks like nothing changes. I often ask this question, what are two slaves thinking when they're sitting on their plantation somewhere? They're like, yeah, dude, this will never change. This will always be this way, because things feel like when you're in the moment that they will always be that way until they're not. Well, I think the same thing is true for our political space now. Not saying it's easy, not saying it's going to take place, but I'm saying it is possible. And those possibilities are, for the most part, has to do with numbers of people being engaged in a political space for a period of time. There is hope.
Absolutely. The audience is saying live long and prosper.
Yeah. Star Trek for that. I had a Worf thing, right? So one of my subscribers, Trudy, loves Worf. If I'm not mistaken, is a little aroused by Worf, if we're being honest. And there was an episode of Worf that I was going to do in one of my episodes and just hadn't got the opportunity to do the episode. And my wife was sitting there watching it with me, and I would pause it and be like, this is an awesome thing. Worf is trying to become a man, but he doesn't necessarily know what that means. And get into these ideas, man. Like, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a Klingon? What does it mean to be anything from an identity standpoint? And those vantage points, not just from a human perspective, but from other races with other level of politics, their perspective in the process, those things are fascinating to me. The stuff that Star Trek comes up with allows you to look at your society through a third person lens in a way that oftentimes people are too close to in order to get an honest take on. No, I like I said, my show kind of runs the gambit on that stuff.
Hell yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. This was an awesome show. Thank you so much.
I am glad for the invite. Thank you for the invite. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Keep rocking it. You kick ass. We're sending love. Thank you so much. Afterwards, you can definitely check out the comments. You're getting a lot of love there.
Oh, nice. It's like when you go to other people's platform, it's like you're going into a different world. I don't know if when you're on other people's shows, their audiences and everything else, it's the texture is different. It's their worlds. I don't know how else to say it. I went on somebody's show in order to fight for Medicare for all, to defend Medicare for all. And it's like you're on their show and your typical audience is not there to back you up. So it's like you're in your shape, and it's like you're kind of in this kind of mosh pit where you realize, like, wow, people are so different. Like you're that show, and I kept thinking to myself, like, wow, this is so different. It's like I'm on a different planet. And I remember going back to my show, having like this epiphany, this come to Jesus moment, like, oh my God, all of these shows, like, and I know this is stupid because of course people are going to be different on the various platforms. But I guess I got so used to doing my show, but being on somebody else's show where I don't call the shots. I'm not the god of that particular space. They're not my audience. This is like that scene in was it 300 where he's like, I'm not your king, and you're not going to be treated well. That's how I felt. It's like, this is not your audience. You're not going to get the love that you typically get.
Yeah.
So it's all right. No, I enjoy it though. This was great. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jamarl. Best of luck with everything. Keep doing what you're doing. You're kicking ass.
Do my damnedest. Thank you very much. You guys have a
Thank
good one.
you. Take care.